One spring morning when I was about 15 years old, I went down to the barn to feed the horses. I did this every morning before most of the household stirred. But on this morning, when I opened the door, I could not see the sunrise. Instead, I was greeted by a muted world covered in a thick, dense gray fog, so intense that I could not see beyond our front porch. Into the darkness, I ran down the hill to the barn. The fog dampened the sounds of the morning. Everything was quiet. The birds were not singing. The cats were sleeping. The dogs did not stir from their resting places. I gathered the bucket of oats and flung open the barn doors, expecting to see my usual hungry customers. But the horses were not waiting at the door for their breakfast. For a moment, I was frightened. I worried that something had happened to them during the night. Maybe a horse had become injured, or perhaps they had broken through the fence again. I decided to venture out into the fog to see if I could find them. And so, taking a feed bucket to make noise, to attract the horses, and perhaps to ward off anything that I could not see in the dark, I took the bucket and I started hitting it, calling for the horses, and looking in the fog, walking deeper and deeper into the pasture, a pasture that I could not see. As my heart rate started to climb and I started to become even more worried, suddenly I saw a figure move in the mist, and slowly a head of a horse emerged walking towards me. I took a small sigh of relief and then more relief when a second horse slowly followed behind. And then I watched a third horse, close beside the second horse, moved toward me. Not at an excited pace, which was unusual because I had a bucket of feed, but they moved slowly towards me. That experience was a moment of fear, but also mixed with awe. Sometime in that night, they had wandered off, and those two horses, finding them and this third was both a miracle, but also a problem. You see, we had only two horses, and I had found three. Sometime during the night, our mare had given birth to a healthy colt. She had cleaned him. She had nudged him to walk, to make his first trip to the barn. And the other horse had stayed by her side while she labored and gave birth during the night. That foal was early. We weren't expecting it yet, and so many things could have gone wrong. But instead, it was a miracle on that morning. That experience has stayed with me through the years. In moments of fear or worry, I can experience that wonder again. The birth of the foal near dawn, taking its first steps, the memory that has fed me in times of sadness and despair and has invited me to look, to find, to seek the wonder all around me when I least expect it. Do you have a memory like that? One that's in the pocket of your heart that you pull out in times of need? Or maybe you're still looking for it. I know that you'll find it. In a season when ancient stories are told about people led to freedom in Egypt and a Jewish teacher who develops a large following through his teaching about radical love, but then is killed by the imperial state, what does this season offer for humanists, for non-believers, some believers, some belief, wherever you are on that range? For some, the ancient stories still have power. But spring offers us a script. Spring reminds us of the power of transformation, that there is a possibility. There's always possibility when none seems possible. and that new growth is available to us all, and that a part of that growth is cultivating a sense of wonder. But are we even paying attention? In 2015 at Cabrillo National Monument in San Diego, visual artist Scott Pollock set up a row of folding chairs on a cliff overlooking the ocean for a project that he named Applause Encouraged. The artist then formally cordoned off the chairs with a red rope, and about 45 minutes before sunset, guests began to arrive. Welcomed by a greeter, those attending the event were reminded to put their cell phones away. No photographs allowed were on signs as they entered the space. Ushers steered the guests to their seats, and for the next half hour, they watched the sun go down into the Pacific Ocean, as if they were at a Broadway performance. When the sunset finished, the guests applauded, and refreshments were served. When I first read about this art installation, I was struck by how the artist invited people to pay reverent attention in a communal setting to something that happens almost every single day: the sunset. To not only watch the sun disappear, but to feel the change in the air, the light, the shift in the evening breeze. Guests were not allowed to mediate that sunset through their phones, as many of us are becoming more and more accustomed to. This is a really good moment. Let's take out our phone. Even during the first service, when Marlon Lavenhar was giving his sermon, I had a particularly good moment, and so I took some pictures of you, even though I was technically in church. The sunset event was a practice of openness and wonder. And whether the artist intended it or not, he created a space, the potential for spiritual connection, for a direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. Practices of attention and curiosity are inherently open-ended, oriented towards something outside of ourselves. Writer Jenny Odell reminds us, through attention and curiosity, we can suspend our tendency towards the instruments of understanding, seeing things or people one-dimensionally as products of their functions, and instead sit with unfathomable fact of their existence, which opens up towards us but can never be fully grasped or known. Certainly, the Unitarian transcendentalists were clear that we encounter the unfathomable, the holy, the miracles in everyday life. Ralph Waldo Emerson, whom our Emerson Hall is named after, he said, all of life is a miracle, and that he saw miracles in the blowing clover and the falling rain. But in a world with demanding pressures of work and home and school, and for some of us, it's helping our children to navigate the complexities of life, sometimes struggling to earn enough money to put food on the table, when friends and loved ones, strangers, are facing the very real and present threats of racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and hate. Cultivating a sense of wonder, looking for the miracle and the beauty in the everyday, can feel like a colossal waste of time. But how else can we do that work without it? How can we fight for change? How can we work for justice without witnessing the potential, the possibility of transformation? How can we do that in our own lives when we hit those lowest points? That we can somehow still imagine or see or experience that something else is possible than the moment in our space, in our lives, that feels like there is nowhere to go. Nature writer Annie Dillard understands this struggle to even find the time to see the world. She says, our lives are complex. There are many things that we must consider before we go considering the lilies. And yet Dillard cultivated an openness in her life where she could marvel at the breakfast table of feeling her createdness as a creature like any other, a wonder to behold, Or like the girls in this morning's story, which was written actually from a Buddhist perspective, them really thinking about the deep interbeingness, those deep relationships with the earth and all that was around them and one another. Annie Dillard cultivated an openness in her life where she could marvel not only at the breakfast table, but like the transcendentalist she sought to emulate in her writing, she rediscovered a holy curiosity abounding in everything. When she sees the harsh side of nature, she sees that with a holy curiosity, and she sees the epiphanies too. Mystery surrounds us, she discovers, and we are but a small part. A member of the Ute people and a Catholic nun, Sister Maria Jose Hobade, remembers the words her mother spoke to her as they stood before the silhouette of the Ute Mountains at dusk. Take this beauty into your heart, her mother urged. Learn it. Someday you will only be able to see this with the eyes of your heart. Then it'll be important for you to have the beauty inside of you. Memorize the land, her mother told her. This is good advice, and it is one of the ways we build a relationship with nature and place and wonder that gives us sustenance in difficult times. When we experience a place with all of our senses, finding the beauty, taking it to heart, and memorizing it, when we see the beauty and connect not just with your mind, but with your heart, your emotions, your senses, write about it, draw it, walk with it, dwell, move in that space, make space for it, hold it, and share it with others. Do it alone, do it together. Build those relationships with the wonder of nature. Dillard also tells us beauty and grace are performed in nature whether or not we will sense them. Think about that. Beauty in nature, wonder is happening all the time. But she tells us the least we can do is try to be there. We don't know where we're going from here, she reminds us. Our life is a faint tracing on the surface of mystery. We must somehow take a wider view, look at the whole landscape, really see it, and describe what's going on here. Then at least we can wail the right question in the swaddling band of darkness, or if it comes to that, choir the proper praise. For her, seeing the rich interactions of life happening before us in detail reminds us of how much we are missing. And with her eyes wide and her ears attentive, her holy curiosity abounding, where she sees the harsh side of nature, as I said before, and those epiphanies, she's reminded and she reminds us that we are just a small part. But part of our part is to build those relationships, to live thoughtfully, to remember to take care of one another with the earth and nature and its beauty. E.B. White, author of such divergent classics as Charlotte's Web and The Elements of Style, personal favorite, wrote an introductory essay for a gardening book entitled Onward and Upward in the Garden, written by his wife, Catherine Sargent White. Catherine served as the editor for The New Yorker for decades. She helped shape post-war American fiction by identifying and nurturing some of the best writers of the 20th century. Catherine loved to edit, and she struggled to write, and she loved her garden. E.B. describes his wife as an opinionated gardener, a devoted lover of flowers and vegetables, an addict of garden catalogs. Every autumn, Catherine would begin planning for spring. She would pore over her seed catalogs. She dreamt of the colors, the form the garden would take with her careful planning. And in late autumn, she would begin planting the bulbs, the harbingers of spring. E.B. described this ritual. He wrote, armed with a diagram and a clipboard, Catherine would get into a shabby old Brooks raincoat, much too long for her, put on a little round wool hat, pull on a pair of overshoes, and proceed to the director's chair, a folding canvas thing that they would place at the edge of the garden plot for her every year. And there she would sit, hour after hour, in the wind, in the weather, while their handyman, Henry Allen, would help produce dozens and dozens of brown paper packages of new bulbs and basketfuls of old ones ready for their intricate interment. As Catherine aged and her health declined, she suffered from congestive heart failure. She continued to garden, even if it became more improbable that she would live to see spring unfold and her bulb garden bloom. During the last year of her life, autumn arrived, and she insisted on laying out the garden once again. E.B. described the moment. There was something almost comical yet touching in her bedraggled appearance on this special, awesome occasion. The small, hunched-over figure, her studied absorption in the implausible notion that there would be yet another spring for her. Oblivious to the ending of her own days, she knew perfectly well what was at hand, sitting there with her detailed chart under the dark skies in dying October, calmly plotting the resurrection. Although Catherine White knows that death is near, she stays committed to her garden, committed to a future she may never see. She plans for beauty. She plans for hope. She plans for new possibilities. So this Sunday, I want to leave you with a simple message about new life, transformation. If you feel that you've come to the end of your rope, if you lost a relationship or a job, if you have experienced what seems to be an ending, plot the impossible, possibility. When you see death, when you see emptiness, when you see cruelty, look and listen, plan and plot, look and discover for new possibilities. Make a way out of no way. Do the hardest thing in your life and transform contradictions into paradoxes. Be a gardener of your spirit. Be a gardener of your spirit. We know what came from the garden of E.B. White's wife, Catherine: daffodils and tulips, the color of new life, and inspiring love, even as she faced death. What are you planning for this season of your life? What hope are you nurturing? What wonder have you found? And perhaps it's one of the greatest gifts that we can give one another, especially in times of despair, when the road to a more just and humane world has grown increasingly rocky and difficult. We, in this moment, then, must remind one another that new life and love still happens. If only we look for it, if only we plan for it, cultivate it, live it. For now, and the days ahead, so be it.